Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
And welcome to NHL Wraparound, presented by UBS Financial Services, Inc. It is time for our conference final preview. Vic Morren, Neil Smith, and Neil, we're going to hit the ground running today, so please bring in our usual co-star.
I'm not sure that he's the co-star. He might be the star, which is Craig Button from TSN in Canada. For all you Americans that don't know, TSN, the Sports Network. Craig, welcome back.
I love being part of this. Listen, I think I'm like Kramer. I could get my hair like Kramer. I'm not the star, but I add to the show.
I think you are the star. But anyway, I regress.
Well, he's going to be the star by the time we get to the end of this. But the first things that we have to hit, Game 7 played on Monday night. Canadiens and the Buffalo Sabres, and the Canadiens, despite getting outplayed badly for the second consecutive Game 7, managed to prevail in overtime by a 3-2 score. Alex Tuch with his 7th of the playoffs from Alexander Carrier at 11:22 of overtime. Craig, Barry Melrose used to tell me that 99% of the time, teams that deserve to win in a best-of-7 usually do. Not so with this Canadiens team twice now.
Yeah, we go back to the first round versus Tampa Bay. 9 shots on goal in Game 7, a couple of bank shots, including Alex Tuch, who is now becoming the series clinching killer for the teams, Tampa Bay and now Buffalo. The playoffs are about finding a way to win. You know, we look at the series, and we saw a lot of games where Montreal outplayed Buffalo, and so they piled up the wins. And when a team gets behind in a series, now things start to work against you. And when they start to work against you, now you get these types of events that happen. Tampa Bay was down 3-2. Buffalo was down 3-2. What Montreal has been able to do is find a way to win after a loss. You know, you lose 3 games at home, like Tampa Bay, like Buffalo did. And yeah, you can look at Montreal's home record, but hey, you get home ice for a reason. Then they weren't able to take advantage.
Absolutely agree that they just couldn't get it done. And I think you got a point in large measure to Jakub Dobeš, because, I mean, where they had the big guy in net, the guy that was consistent and has been consistent throughout the playoffs, Buffalo just hasn't had that. Buffalo's been teeter-tottering. Lindy Ruff's had to go with Lyon and UPL and decide mid-game who's going to play, like who's on, who's going. Even last night, it didn't look like UPL was going, but then he got his game going, and Buffalo was good. But I think that that's been a huge part of the Montreal winning formula is Jakub Dobeš.
Craig, after the game went to 2-0, and you could see gradually that Montreal was just sitting back, and it was a combination of things. It was Montreal sitting back, but Buffalo was really starting to come. And when that game got tied, early in the third period, about 6.5 minutes in, I texted a buddy of mine, and I said, you know what? This goal may be the best thing to happen to Montreal, because they could no longer sit back, and they actually had to assert themselves if they were going to win this game. And I thought, at least from my perspective, that they actually stabilized the game after they got tied, and that carried into the overtime.
Well, one of the things is when you're trying to nurse a lead, right, you get into this state of comfort and complacency, and, you know, you start to feel, okay, this is nice. And then all of a sudden you feel the pinch between the shoulder blades when it's 2-2, and you realize, well, we can't win the game at 2-2. Now we got to find a way to not lose it and get after it. And I think that's the mental part of the nursing a lead, sitting on a lead, you know, playing to protect the lead, however you want to frame it. And I think that, to your point, Vic, I think that's an excellent point about Montreal now feeling, okay, nobody's won a game tied 2-2. So we better find a way to try to get back up and start playing it. And they did. And, you know, I think to the overtime, like, Tage Thompson has that chance at the 2-on-1, and I was thinking, okay, it's over right now. And this guy's got such an unbelievable shot. I don't know what he was thinking when he comes in. There was a perfect example of a top player overthinking it. I'm going to put this bet on Tage Thompson. Next year in the playoffs, I bet you'll see more of a shooter rather than somebody overthinking it. Because going through that experience now for him, I think he better understands it.
And the other thing that I got to bring up is Alex Tuch, who I really like as a player. I mean, who doesn't? But 0 points. I mean, and he's a UFA. So I know him and his agent probably are looking for a huge payday on July 1st, and they'll get it according to what we make. But he might not get as much as he would have gotten if he'd had a pretty good playoff series. I don't know, Craig. Like, I know when you go to sign guys as free agents, you don't necessarily look at their playoff stats of the year before. You look at their big body of work, which is the regular season. He's going to get big money. He's a big guy. He's strong, but that could hurt him a little bit.
There's no question it could hurt him. And then you got the narrative around him. So whoever signs him, the narrative's going to be, oh, geez, really, you paid him that much money? Look what he did in the playoffs, right? Like, and, then that follows you around. Here's the flip side of that. Maybe some teams that didn't think they could get Alex Tuch, maybe there's a little bit better opportunity. I keep believing that there's no better player for Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl than Alex Tuch to play on the right wing. Big, strong, fast. So maybe the Edmonton Oilers have a shot at him now, where maybe before their chances weren't as good. So that might be the flip side of it. Edmonton goes, we'll pay you. We'll pay you. It's, Neil, you've negotiated a lot of contracts. And, when you go and you phone the agent and you say, what are you looking for? And, usually you're like, oh, okay. But maybe when the agent says we're looking for this and you go, yes. Yeah. Now what does the agent do? Yeah. And for the Edmonton Oilers, they're in a different state for their franchise. They might just have to say yes.
Yeah, real quickly on this one last little bit, I met Alex Tuch's dad at a game in Long Island. I said to him, not knowing where he was from back then, I said, was Alex upset about the trade from Vegas with Eichel? And he said, no, he was thrilled. He said he grew up as a big Sabres fan in Rochester or Syracuse, whichever one it was. So he was just thrilled. And so, Craig, I bring that up only to say, does a kid who's from Western New York, first of all, he'd probably take a hometown discount to stay with the Sabres. Yeah. But if he doesn't, if it's dramatically different, he probably would listen to something from the Rangers or maybe the Devils or an American team that's not too far away. Because the Canadian thing might not be something that he'd want to entertain.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Hey, listen, we saw John Tavares when he was being pursued, and I think everybody felt that he was going to end up in Toronto. Other teams offered him more money, but he said, no, Toronto's where I want to be. And I think to your point, Neil, that's probably where Alex Tuch finds himself as well.
So before we let this go, I think all of us have watched enough hockey over the years that every goal has a twin somewhere. And the first image that I got when I saw that goal go in by Newhook last night was 25 years ago. Second round, Pittsburgh and Buffalo. And similar to this game-winning goal that originated at center ice, this time it was Robert Lang to Darius Kasparaitis, shot from the left circle, not quite as sharp an angle as the one that Newhook took, but a left-handed shot, and it beat Dominik Hasek. 3-2 score, and the goals were literally scored a minute and 40 seconds apart on the score clock. So that was the first thing that came to mind, was that goal. And I went back, I looked at the video, I actually matched the frames up. It was really something. So anybody out there, go back, May 10th, 2001. This goal will look very similar to what you saw last night.
Except for the different uniforms.
Correct.
It was an impressive play. I thought the play that Demidov made at the defensive zone blue line versus Dahlin's been fantastic, right? He created that turnover, and then Carrier jumps right up there, and then before you know it, the game's over. The transition in the game now is so fast. It really is something to watch. We know how fast the game is and the speed of the game, but the transition now, these guys are wired to just turn it back the other way.
So with that win, the Canadiens meet the Carolina Hurricanes in the Eastern Conference Final. This is the 8th time these two franchises have met, going back to the Hurricanes' days back in Hartford. The Canadiens won the first 5, the Canes the last 2. Last time they met was in the opening round of 2006. That was the Canes' only Stanley Cup win. And they clinched in that 6th game on a goal by Corey Stillman, assisted by Rod Brindamore, the current head coach of the Canes. So quickly, Craig, I'll start with you. What have you learned about the Hurricanes and the Canadiens in these first 2 rounds that maybe you didn't know before the start of the playoffs?
Well, one thing I want to go back to 2006. Carolina lost the first 2 games at home, and then they switched to Cam Ward, and then they won. Then they ended up winning the series and ultimately the Stanley Cup. And Cam Ward won the Conn Smythe. Not bad when you don't start the playoffs. But what I've learned about the Carolina Hurricanes is that they are going to be a hard team to beat 4 games. They are quick, they are fast, they pressure you, but they're coordinated. I find Buffalo has a little bit of that same type of pressure, but it feels more chaotic. It doesn't feel as coordinated. The Carolina Hurricanes are coordinated, and they're relentless. It is 1, 2, 3, 4. There is no time for you to rest against the Carolina Hurricanes. And every time you go out on the ice against the Carolina Hurricanes, you know it is going to be really challenging. I think that's the biggest challenge for the Montreal Canadiens. Listen, I don't even care what the regular season record is. I really don't. I know we get into this and, hey, listen, does it give Montreal some confidence that they can beat Carolina? It's not about confidence. It's about, can you withstand the pressure that Carolina is going to apply to you? Freddie Anderson right now, he's my number 1 guy for my Conn Smythe halfway through the playoffs.
Yep.
The thing that I learned more about the Carolina Hurricanes, and I think we all did, was the coming out party for Jackson Blake, Logan Stankoven, and Taylor Hall. Hall, of course, has been around a long time. That line, I think, is responsible for the reason that the Hurricanes went 8 straight. Not all the pressure was on Jarvis. Not all the pressure was on Svechnikov, and certainly not all the pressure was on Sebastian Aho, because these guys were able to get goals at timely ways. They've almost played like a number 1 line, but not in the number 1 slot. So they're not getting the checking. I think Carolina's defense is a lot better than we've given them credit for. I think that Miller has found a home there, even though he still makes his mistakes, which we saw in New York, and he's still making them in Carolina. But you add him to that defense, and it is an upgrade from where they were. The biggest thing for me is Logan Stankoven and Jackson Blake. You almost want to throw Zach Benson in there, but then you go, oh, no, he's on Buffalo, because he just fits right in with those 2 guys that are very young, although Benson's the youngest at only 21. They're very young, and they're not big, but they're not small. They're not tall, but they're not small. They're stocky guys.
There's a lot of tall players that play small. Yeah. And there's a lot of players that are sturdy and strong that aren't maybe the tallest that know how to play the game. And Neil, you've scouted for a long time. Vic, you've watched the game. Nothing turns me away more from a player than a bigger, soft-scale guy that plays small. Just want no part. And we all get seduced by it. But what you learn is don't go anywhere near these guys, because ultimately they're going to disappoint you.
So what we've learned about the Canadiens is they're resilient. They have won games that maybe they shouldn't have. I think Alex Tuch has certainly been a hero. And that third line scoring for them came through. Now, I also believe that Layton Hudson and Noah Dobson are going to be punished relentlessly by this Hurricanes team. But quickly reacting to a few points here, the Hurricanes have had 6 and 11 days off, respectively. They have had 17 days off without playing in these playoffs. And they don't have Brian Rust, but they may have Rust when they open this series on Thursday. And as you mentioned before, if the Habs got smothered by the Sabres, how are they going to handle the Hurricanes, even though, Craig, you mentioned the regular season success that the Canadiens did go 3-0 against Carolina. Montreal does have skating ability. I think that Freddie Anderson is going to see more side-to-side movement as opposed to maybe traffic he would have seen against Buffalo. So taking into those points and run with them, Neil, I'll start with you.
Well, I think one of the guys we never talk about is Josh Anderson on Montreal. I mean, last night's game, that one forecheck that looked like Paul Holmgren reincarnated when he went into the corner there and the puck ended up coming out and going in the Buffalo net. That was just tremendous. He is relentless and he doesn't care. He's there to be punched. If you need to punch him, go ahead. He's just something else. We don't talk about him because there's so many other brighter lights to talk about on that team, but I thought he was really important. And I'll tell you something, if they play that physical brand like that, they could throw Carolina off their game. I think Carolina's not going to be intimidated by them, but I do think that Montreal is going to have to use that physical tone. As far as Dobson and Hudson go, Hudson's like a fly in the room. Like, it's really tough to catch this guy. Dobson's not that way. Dobson, you're going to be able to catch him. I'm not convinced yet that Dobson's an elite defenseman. I saw him play umpteen times on the Islanders, and now he's in Montreal. Is he better in Montreal? Yes, because the team's better. And because he's put in spots where it's easier to be successful than he was in New York. But I do think that it's going to be very interesting. And then you've got the Dobish-Anderson factor, which is, I don't expect Dobish to go down in his play. I expect him to keep going the way he has been.
What's your pick?
My pick for this series?
Yes.
I'm probably going to...
Who in 7?
Huh?
Who in 7?
I'm probably going to surprise you guys, but I'm going to go with Carolina. I'm going to go with Carolina in 5.
Craig, the floor is yours.
I'm going with Carolina in 5 also. I think Montreal might find a way to win a game, maybe one that they don't deserve to win. Carolina's too hard, too quick, too fast. I talked to Sebastian Aho last week on an NHL radio interview, and I asked him, what's harder, Rod Brindamore's practices or the games? And Sebastian stopped and he thought about it, and his answer was this. He goes, every time we hit the ice, we're there to work. He goes, the games are always going to be harder because of your opponent. He goes, but when we're on the ice, we work. I'm not worried one bit about the days off. I think this team is going to come out like shot out of a cannon. I just think they're too much for Montreal to handle. I really do. And I'm with Neil in 5.
I think it's unanimous across the board. I think Montreal will figure out a way to win one game, but I think the pressure is just too much by Carolina, and I look for them to advance to their first final since winning the Cup in 2006. Just a reminder that this is NHL Wraparound, brought to you by UBS Financial Services, Inc. Before we get into the Western Final, Craig, I want to talk a little bit about the Vegas Golden Knights away from the ice, because Neil and I had a pretty spirited discussion the other day about the perception of this team being the most disliked in the NHL, and we gave several examples. The 2017 expansion rules kind of loosened for them. Of course, they make the finals the first year. There's a circus atmosphere at T-Mobile Arena, which is artificial to a lot of hockey purists. They circumvented the cap in 2023 to free up Mark Stone's money in order to acquire Barbashev and quick at the trade deadline. They went there by signing Carter Hart, where other teams maybe wouldn't have. They're among the least penalized teams in the NHL the last 5 seasons. And, of course, even now, the club is refusing to let other Pacific Division rivals, specifically Edmonton and L.A., talk to former coach Bruce Cassidy about their head coaching position. So, but realistically, the only rule that they have broken was the media rule, not talking to the press after Game 6 of the Anaheim series. What are your thoughts?
They call it Sin City for a reason. And I think that they live up to being the devil. They're like the Joker in the Batman series. They just kind of chuckle and joke. They sit back and everything. I'm not going to suggest it, but they have a mob mentality. And the mob went out there to try to take advantage of it. And they don't care. They don't care what anybody thinks. They don't care what anybody does. They're going to do their own thing. We talk about how they're perceived outside. I mean, the players all there know, you go, when they're done with us, we know it's over. Like, there's no holds barred when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, how they operate. Ruthless and everything they go. That's who they are. And give them credit for being that. Yeah, they broke the rules and the league came down on them, and we understand that. But at the same time, the Vegas Golden Knights are making no apologies. We call it Sin City. They don't go to confession.
That's a good one.
Well, they are going to meet the President's Trophy winning Colorado Avalanche. This is their second playoff meeting. The Golden Knights won in 6 games in 2021, coming back from an 0-2 deficit, similar to what you talked about earlier with the Hurricanes against the Canadiens back in 2006. They also met in the round robin in the bubble in 2020, but we're going to skip right over that. So 6 days off, Neil, for the Avalanche. That appears to be just the right amount of time for them because, of course, we saw Cale Makar look like he was a bit nicked up towards the end of that series with Minnesota.
He definitely was. You could see he was in some discomfort. He went to the bench, went to the locker room one time. McKinnon got the puck in the face. Don't forget, that's got to be hurting and maybe healed up by now. You know, the 6 days is a good amount of time to have off. Jared Bednar will have gotten them ready for this opponent. And I think they'll be ready to go, and I would expect that they'll hit the ground running. Again, I want to mention about Colorado that this is another team that you're not sure which goaltender they're going to use, right? Because Bednar hasn't gone back and forth, but you don't know which wood he's going to pull out of his bag, like a golfer. Is it going to be Blackwood or Wedgwood? That's the one thing, whereas you know, Vegas is basically going to stick with Hart the whole time, or you're going to know that Hart's going to be starting for them. You're not quite sure with the Avalanche. So that might be a little chink in their armor. But other than that, Colorado is just so darn stacked. Really hard to imagine them not winning.
Craig, I wanted to ask you just about a couple of injuries for the Golden Knights. Mark Stone and Jeremy Lauzon did not practice on Monday. Stone's thing seems to be a little bit more mysterious because he just brushed past Alex Killorn and then came up off the ice. And so for Vegas, those are 2 key pieces for them.
They are. But, you know, one of the things that I think has really helped Vegas here, and like Mark Stone, they've learned how to play with Mark Stone, obviously a really good player, but they've learned how to play without him. Jeremy Lauzon, he plays hard. He's a bottom pair defenseman. Getting Wild Bill Karlsson back has been a real key to this team. The way he skates, kills penalties, plays on the power play. It's given the speed that it helps Hurdle, it helps Marner. So that takes pressure off of Eichel. You know, Dorofeyev has been outstanding for the Vegas Golden Knights. And this has been a good team. They were let down by goaltending for the large part of the year. And obviously a big reason why Bruce Cassidy was let go. You watch this team play, and I think Wild Bill Karlsson has been a real key return to that thing. Again, Mark Stone, they're better with Mark Stone. But without William Karlsson, I think that would be a real challenge. The other thing I wanted to mention about Colorado, look at how many players they had playing the Olympics. This break for the Colorado Avalanche, 4-game sweep in the first round, now the 6 days, I think it really helped. Not just the injuries, but just the mental fatigue. Because the Colorado Avalanche know what it takes to go deep. They've been there, they've done it. And now you get yourself really rested mentally as well as physically. I think that helps not only the players that might be a little bit nicked up, but it also helps you just in your frame of mind.
Do you think that the Golden Knights are better served, Craig, by watching how the Kings defended against the Avalanche as opposed to the Wild? Because LA did a pretty good job cutting off the ice and making that a much tighter series. I mean, they obviously didn't have the depth of the Avalanche, but they did a pretty admirable job defending Colorado.
Vegas is a good defensive team. When you look at how they played during the course of the season, the defensive play, the offensive numbers, I mean, they didn't have as much offensive punch, but they were doing things that if you get more skill in the lineup, you're going to be able to take more advantage of it. But they were a good defensive team, and I think that's absolutely a blueprint that you want to follow and try to look at, because if you don't slow down the Colorado Avalanche, they're going to run roughshod over you.
I think with Vegas, too, the thing that I want to mention is you've got 4 guys up front, and you've named most of them, Craig, already. But having Mitch Marner playing the way he's playing is just incredible. I love Jack Eichel and the way he's playing. This is not a guy who shies away in the playoffs. I mean, he's just a terrific talent. And you've mentioned Dorofeyev. Boy, can he score goals at timely times. And then you've got William Karlsson back in the lineup. Those 4 forwards, they can go head-to-head with the best 4 on Colorado. Yep. Maybe not McKinnon, because I don't think there is another McKinnon out there. But those 4 guys are dynamic players for the Vegas Golden Knights. And now that we all know that Marner is not the Marner that we used to see in Toronto, he's a different Marner. This guy is amazing, and he pushed them through the Anaheim series.
Yeah, he sure did. And you talked about Dorofeyev. I mean, that overtime winning goal he scored, that was an unbelievable goal. He took that puck out of the air and put it right under the bar. And I mean, he's a real find. You think about drafting, you think about finding players later in the draft. I mean, what a find. And for a team that just, gives away their draft picks in the first, second, third rounds like it's Halloween candy, finding a Dorofeyev, I think that's pretty impressive.
Well, the other thing they do too, Craig, and I wanted to mention this earlier, Vic, one of the reasons why they're disliked so much, in my opinion, is because they don't believe in drafting and developing. It seems like, at least that's what it looks like from the surface, because they draft, but they don't develop. They trade. Draft and trade, draft and trade, draft and trade, and sometimes don't even draft, just trade. So at some point, that's got to catch up with them. You would think it always has in the past, but it hasn't yet.
And sometimes just give up your draft picks by not showing up for media availability. Gary's not too happy about what they just pulled off, because I've said this previously, the media pays billions of dollars. So franchise values have gone up, revenues have gone up, that's ownership. Managers' salaries have gone up. Coaches' salaries have gone up. We know players' stuff. And that's how you treat the media? Oh, boy. That was a real miss by the Vegas Golden Knights. A real miss.
It was. And I think the one thing that they haven't done there, and Vic, you can comment on this since you know him so well, you need to have somebody chaperoning John Tortorella when he's your coach. You need to have somebody there to say, no, John, we can't do that. We got to go to the media. We got to do it. You can't do this. If you let him just run roughshod, he's going to make these self-inflicted wounds.
Yeah. Well, who knows? Maybe it was the noise ordinance in John Wayne Airport.
Do you know what I heard, Vic? You know what I heard? That it was pre-planned, and they were mad because of the Braden McNabb suspension. And it was a way of them to protest. We brought that up the other day.
We brought that up the other day, and we said if they were so concerned about what the consequence would be if they didn't talk to the media, why didn't they just appeal the McNabb suspension instead?
Whether that's true, I mean, that's what I've heard, okay, and you guys have talked about it as well. Bottom line is, doesn't it speak to Vegas? Oh, we'll show you. Well, maybe the commissioner said, oh, yeah? Okay, you want to play that way? Here's what you're going to get. You want to mess with the bull? You're going to get the horns. And let's be very clear here, Gary's the bull.
So are they going to show Colorado in this series?
Nope.
What do you got?
Colorado in 6.
Neil?
I got to find a way to get a hold of Craig in the standings. And if I keep agreeing with him, he's just going to move along with me. And we're going to maybe I should go rogue and go Vegas in this one, so that if I'm right, I get some points to advance. I can't, though. I got to go Colorado. I've said they're going to win the Cup all year long. Yeah. I'm going to continue to say that. I'm going to say, you said 6, Craig?
Yeah,
so
I did.
I've either got to go 7 or 5. I'm going to say Colorado in 5.
Wow.
Neil, can I just say something to you? Yeah. Well, no, I like it. And Neil, one thing I would say is that, like, beating me in this little fun thing that we do is far less important than losing your credibility. Stay with your expertise, keep your credibility, because beating me doesn't matter.
Well, I've actually done pretty well picking a couple of upsets. In the first 2 rounds, I had Philly beating Pittsburgh, and then I had Montreal beating Buffalo. Why not? Let's go for a third one. I'm taking Vegas in 6.
Wow.
So I'm going to be the one that's going to go rogue here. So before we let Craig go, Neil, the updated standings, please.
Here are the standings for all of you out there with bated breath waiting to hear these things. Craig Button in Canada, of course. Would he have an edge on us being in the United States and knowing things? He's at 67 points so far. Remember, If you guess the winner and the exact number of games, you get 10 points. For every game you're off, you lose a point. That's how Craig got to 67. Of course, if you don't pick the right team, you get 0. Second place is Vic with 57 points. Very much helped by that Montreal overtime win last night that left Craig and Neil with 0 for that series and Vic with 9 points. So he jumps up to second, and I'm in the basement at 53 points. So it's 67, 57, 53.
And just remember, because of the exchange rate, Craig really only has 57.
I like that, Vic. That is really, really good, right?
Greg, thanks so much for joining us for the third time during these playoffs. It never gets old. Your insight is fabulous. And needless to say, we look forward to having you back for our Stanley Cup final preview in about 2 weeks.
Which will be Montreal versus Vegas.
Yes, yeah. The fun and pleasure is all mine because the camaraderie and what we were able to exchange here, I just so enjoy it. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, buddy.
Always our pleasure.
Okay, good.
Neil, it's just like 3 guys sitting at a bar.
It is, and it's always so much fun with Craig, and he's so enthusiastic, and he's got such a great historical perspective when he needs it. I mean, some of the stories he tells, I can't remember them, and then I get my memory refreshed by how he goes through them, but just terrific. I could stay doing that for hours. It's just so much fun.
Well, we almost did that before we actually started recording.
Yeah, we were on a long time before the record.
What do you got for the conference final TV schedule?
I get to do the TV schedule for once. Well, let's see. The NHL Western Conference opens on Wednesday, May 20th, and they'll go every other night on ESPN. They'll all be 8 o'clock starts Eastern time, except Game 4, which will be Tuesday, May 26th, and that'll start at 9 p.m. Eastern time.
And that game will be in Vegas. The East will start on Thursday, May 21st. That will run every other night, also on TNT. All of these games are at 8 o'clock Eastern, except Game 2, this coming Saturday, the 23rd. That will start at 7 o'clock Eastern, and Game 6 on Sunday, May 31st. Of course, that's an if necessary. That time is still TBD.
You know, we got to thank our buddy Craig Button for joining us again. And just a terrific guy to come on our show and do these predictions. He did it for us last year. It's almost like we're looking forward to it. He's looking forward to it, and it's a lot of fun. So thanks, Craig. Thanks for being on with us.
And as always, thanks to our presenting sponsor, UBS Financial Services, Inc. NHL Wraparound and UBS Financial Services, Inc. are not affiliated. UBS Financial Services, Inc., also UBS, is a sponsor of NHL Wraparound. No other affiliation, relationship, or endorsement is made, suggested, intended, or should be implied or inferred between UBS and NHL Wraparound or any of the individuals or businesses and or their respective products and services appearing in this program.
If you want to write to us and tell us what you think of the show, tell us what you think is going to happen in the NHL playoffs, tell us anything you want, reach us at neil@nhlwraparound.com or vic@nhlwraparound.com. Every podcast we do is available on all podcast platforms. That includes Apple, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and of course, YouTube. You can watch it on there as well. Please leave us a review if you can. And also ask your friends to subscribe. Tell them about the show. We need some more subscribers. I think we're deep into the 800s right now, but we'd like to get over that threshold of 1,000. You can also find us with our shorts and comments on X, also on Instagram, TikTok, and RayD8. That's RAYD, the number 8.TV. And we're also on a new platform called Buzzer, BZZR.com, which is terrific. You can get all the different sports on there, and they've asked us to be their main hockey show on Buzzer. Our website is NHLWraparound.com, and Minnesota Wild will get their spring cleaning done by us on Wednesday, and then Stanley Cup date returns on Thursday.
You did that so well. You're hired.
Thank you.
We'll speak to you again with the Spring Cleaning Wednesday and Cup date on Thursday. Thanks, as always, for your support. Take care.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.